If someone beats a traffic light, for instance, the last mile official should know that this person has broken the law. But what can I do to restrain, arrest, or stop him? He too must not break the law in the course of trying to restrain and arrest. So there are very overlapping rights.
Yes.
And that is why we must respect those rights. Yeah.
So now it's...
What up, people? It's your favorite podcast man back again with another one. I'm Michael Scenario.
And I'm Muriel Ogunkoya.
And you're welcome to Menisms. And we got a special guest here with us today. I'm going to let him introduce himself.
My name is Kóláwolé Olúwádàre. I work with SERAP.
Okay. All right. So before we get into that, obviously, the first thing, as we always like to say, make sure you subscribe to all our audio platforms. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube, our Spotify, our Apple Music, everything that's out there so you can hear us and also see us each week. We appreciate you. Before we get into things, though, obviously, the first thing we do is check-ins. How's your week been? How's everything?
So it was my birthday over the weekend, actually. So
I
had a relaxing weekend, so to say. It's very rare for an average struggling Nigerian like myself
Struggling.
to have a relaxing weekend.
You know, people in the comments I see this say your own struggle different from everybody's struggle.
Please,
The way you
whatever
dress
the
up,
definition
way
of
you're
struggle
looking.
is, everybody's having their own struggle. So, but I was eased off of my struggles for a little bit. So it was a very deserving weekend, I would say, for myself.
What about you? How's your weekend?
Apparently, you don't know the struggle. Struggle to catch up with you, though. My weekend was fine. It was good, really. Yeah.
Okay.
I went to church.
What's your definition of a fine weekend?
Fine weekend is I get to get on my bike and I have to ride my two wheels. That's my bicycle and my motorcycle.
All right.
Okay, what kind of motorcycle?
It's a 750cc Honda NC 750X.
You're a brave man.
That is a beast of a
Not
bike.
really. Most of my problems would be cagers, those who drive cars. Possibly like you guys, actually. Do you ride?
Fair enough.
No,
not yet for me.
Not in Lagos.
Okay, you live long. That's good.
Amen. But
All right. Okay.
So
fantastic.
before we get into everything, obviously we're going to read the comments. Thank you to you guys that keep sending them in. We appreciate you. So we got one from a guest whose real name or fake name is Adenike. Muriel, I'll let you read the question first.
All right. So this person says, "Hi, I have a question. I'm currently dating this guy we met through a link-up group. I stay in Lagos and he stays in Asaba due to work. Communication-wise, I'm the one always reaching out and he claims to be busy with work and all, but like it's not something personal, according to him. Please, am I overthinking this communication of a thing or this is a red flag?"
I mean, you said it yourself. You're in Lagos, he's in Asaba. Like, I don't know how you really want this to work unless you're seeing each other regularly.
So, first of all, I feel like we've not gotten full context of the information. We don't know if by dating they've actually met each other before, or they just met online and they just agreed to start seeing
I feel
each
like
other.
Nigerians throw that word dating so loosely.
That's what I say, yeah. Okay,
Because
so-
even you see, at least already automatically when I say date, I'm like, you're not
But what does
dating.
this mean, really?
Pardon?
Dating in Nigeria, what does it mean?
We have so many definitions.
There's so many definitions, and
So
that's
many
why
definitions.
so many people have so many heartbreaks and so many problems and situationships instead of just a standard definition of dating.
But you know the funny thing is, sitting across the table, I'm pretty sure three of us have different definitions of what dating. So for me, I'll say dating is, and I think I've gone by the Nigerian context of what the dating meaning is. So dating for me is you've crossed the talking stage. You guys are decided to be exclusive, and that's what you mean by dating. That's in the Nigerian context. If I'm outside the country, dating usually means you guys are going out on dates and seeing each other. You haven't quite figured out what direction you want to go in, and so the dating process is going to help you with that. So yeah.
So to you, dating is not a matter of time. So because the "what are we" question gets asked after 3 months, 6 months, or 9 months.
Depending, to me, it's not a time factor. What are we can depend is more dependent on how you feel than how much time has gone by. So
Apparently, you've been asked that a lot.
I reserve my comments.
No judgment.
No judgment, but I would say dating doesn't count unless you both have an adult conversation about it. Because a lot of us, especially in Nigeria, we don't like to have adult conversations. And I was once guilty of that. But now, unless I say it as a man, like, I don't want to say as a man because it's wrong, but obviously it's usually the man that takes the lead to say if it's going to be official or not. So until I say it, we ain't dating. That's why I said, unless it's officially said from the man that you are my girl or we are together, we ain't dating. We were
It's
just
still
seeing.
fun.
We were
I
just
agree.
seeing each other.
I agree with that. So until you've officially said, look, I'd like for us to be exclusive, I'd like you to be my girlfriend, it's nothing exclusive.
It's just seeing.
It's just seeing.
So a man can date 2 or 3 women at the same time.
So can a woman.
I would say so.
So
yes.
can a woman.
I'll say so. Yes.
So can a woman.
I'll say so.
I
Yes.
think
The
that's
same
fair
rules
enough.
that apply for me apply for her.
No,
Exactly.
that's good. That's equality. I mean,
Exactly. I mean, so again, I think to further address her question, for me and my own personal advice, I would say that if he's seeming like he doesn't have your time, because I think that's where she's coming from. If he's seeming like he doesn't have your time, then I would say ask him to ask for his audience for a proper conversation. All right. Address that, look, you're not okay with the fact that he's not communicating as much or that you're the one reaching out. And that's her personal, but she likes someone who would reach out as much as she does. If he's not reaching out as much, give him an ultimatum. Say, okay, you know what? I'll give you one last chance. If I don't see any changes, I'm sorry, but I'll just have to
Why
move on
should
from
we
this.
give him an ultimatum?
Because you know why I say this?
adults.
No,
All
you
this
know why I
stuff
say
about
this?
ultimatum doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
That's why
but-
everybody keeps getting
But you know the
heartbroken
problem
over
with that. You know the problem with that. These are emotions we're talking about. You can't just wake up and say, "Oh, I'm moving on."
Yes, you can. Look, we're all adults.
You're saying
You
this-
know, I've realized as
Yes.
adults now, like, it's even just like process thinking. It's like, look, if you don't like something, you have the choice, you as a person, to say, I don't want this in my life. I have a standard for myself. So instead of saying, oh, ultimatum, which a lot of people do, well, and sometimes at times it's more women that do it than men, saying, oh, unless you do this, you wonder why you keep being heartbroken when you keep doing ultimatum. Me as a guy too, I'm even revealing secret now, sir. As a guy, if you give me ultimatum,
You work towards
you
the
basically
ultimatum.
just said,
I agree.
I'm giving you another chance, and that's like, I look at this girl, I'm just going to,
Do what you do. Yeah. So I fully agree with that. But when I say ultimatum, I didn't necessarily mean, okay, by 2 days, if you've not contacted me. No, that's what I mean. Ultimatum as in, I
the
need to
conversation.
see an actual change. I'm not telling you that I need to see a change in 1 week. I'm not telling you. See, you as the person would know when somebody is doing it in the short time that you ask them to do it, as opposed to something that they've genuinely worked on or something that they've genuinely fixed for you. And that's the truth.
But we're missing a lot in this kind of question. Really, there's a lot of context that is lost.
Exactly.
That's
The
the
nature
nature
of
of
the
a lot.
relationship,
I
how it
started by saying
started,
that.
the kind of
Exactly.
personalities they have.
Because I was about to say, as a
Yeah.
We're
guy,
taking it for granted. Some people can have sincere conversations, I hope you know, because they do not really understand themselves enough to hold
Thank
that.
you very much.
And I understand what you've said about the ultimatum.
Yeah.
The ultimatum is for a conversation,
Exactly.
not for the relationship.
Not for the
so that's what I say. Maybe it's the word ultimatum now. I don't
Okay,
feel
well,
like it
I
should
do-
be
I-
the
I-
word
Let's have
ultimatum.
another name.
Like let's have a conversation. To be honest,
It's
ultimatum
still
is the
an
one
ultimatum.
because me as a guy that's a very triggering word. Ultimatum, like
I know
unless
what-
you're
I know what you mean, and I can relate.
that's why I said I'm also giving her the game from a guy's perspective
know
because
what you
you're
mean.
giving her like the real game as
Yeah.
a woman what she should do, but also we're giving her like a cheat code saying, hey, as you do this, don't forget to us guys too. We know some things you mean when you say certain things. Like now, I'll give you an example real quick. If a girl tells you, look, unless she's your girlfriend. Keyword girlfriend.
Yes.
So you're just seeing or dating.
Yes,
as we
yeah,
like
yes,
to say.
yeah, go
So
on.
look, if you don't do this, that I'm going to be
I'm not
doing
talking
this.
to- I'm
Unless
sorry,
you
but-
want the woman badly, what are you going to do with
And
that?
I agree.
Oh,
And
you
I
open-
agree with you.
No, you open the door.
And you're like, this is the way, please.
No, you won't say. Just open the door.
So I guess for our
If you are.
question asker and also our viewers, this is a safe space. We're all gentlemen. Nobody's saying be bad to anyone. Our advice is get to know yourself. If you understand that the person is bringing standards you cannot live with, you let them know that, look, unfortunately, this doesn't work for me. And if they are really serious, they'll put in effort and try and win you back. But at that point, let them know, look, this doesn't work for me. I would like to step away from this, whatever this is that we have right now. And if by any chance, if I don't see anything more than that, just, you know what, this doesn't work for me, I'd like to step away from this. If the person is serious, be it man or woman, they would always put in the efforts to win you back. Right. But if those efforts don't come in, you just know, okay, well, I guess that wasn't meant for me. So again, like I said, don't settle for less. Let the person know this is not working for you. You'd rather have this. And if they can't provide that, then you move on.
All right. So with that, like you said, make sure you guys keep sending in the comments, questions, and we will continue to read them. So with that, now we're going to transition now to our main topic for today and why we're here. So our guest here today is a very special member of a group that I would like for you to basically explain to the people who they are and what they do, and you yourself what you do in that organization.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Olúwádàre, like I mentioned earlier. So I work with SERAP, that is socio-economic rights an accountability project. I know it bears some semblance to angelic beings, but it's not. It doesn't have H at the end, so it's basically SERAP. Okay. But we do that kind of work, actually. We try to make sure that government is accountable to people. Basically, just Nigerians enjoying their socio-economic rights. That's the simplest way I can put it.
Okay. That's very good and very intriguing. So I have so many questions. But I think just like every other possible viewer of this episode, one of the key questions is, do you think the average Nigerian, because right now I imagine that your movement is for the average Nigerian, right?
Of course, yeah.
Do you believe that, or do you think that the average Nigerian even knows about SERAP as an existence?
Yes. When you say average Nigerian, that would mean every Nigerian, really, because average doesn't, yes. We are not determining this by either race, politics,
exactly. So just every Nigerian.
Every Nigerian. So
would you say that they do know about SERAP?
Mostly, not everyone. Okay. But the name will resonate to an extent depending on how active you are in the civic space.
Okay.
Yes.
So
when maybe not what we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So when you say that now, let me ask an honest question. So for me now, I've heard of SERAP, but I don't know what SERAP is. So when you say the average Nigerian knows of SERAP, in what ways do you guys communicate your messages out to the people for us to understand it, or at least to see what work you guys are doing?
We use social media majorly, and along with other advocacy initiatives and methods that we use. Social media is a good platform. Okay. But for those who would know about us, really, will be mostly those in government, public institutions and public offices.
Okay, fantastic.
But really, that's an irony, because the average Nigerian should know, because our lawsuits are actually public interest lawsuits.
Exactly.
They are not about SERAP. Exactly. It's about the interest of the people. Like the Twitter ban, we had gone to court to challenge the government ban of Twitter. Really, that's not about SERAP. That's about the public. So government officials do know about that, because most of our advocacy initiatives are targeted at them. But we also do citizen initiatives.
Okay. Too. Now, this is fantastic, because this was actually the origin of my question. Because you did mention that, people who would mostly know you are people who are active in the civic sphere, right? And that's actually ironic, like you said, because for the kind of body that you are as SERAP, every Nigerian should know, because you're fighting for us, right? Mm-hmm. So if I have to show interest in civic rights, for me to then know about this body that is fighting for the people that are not interested in civic rights, then that's where the irony comes in, because I feel like that's the first big problem we have as Nigerians. And we've seen that in these last 3 years now, from the NSAS movement to the elections. We've seen now that there's been more activity from the average civilian, not even the people that are interested in civic rights anymore, not even people that are interested in politics anymore or current affairs or whatnot. It's more just the average Joe now. And one of my questions is, or rather one of my, I would say questions is, don't you think that the reach for the audience hasn't quite gone as far as you'd want it to go? And if the answer to that is yes, how do you think you want to get your hands on people who are not interested in civic rights but should be interested in SERAP?
Of course, yeah. And I like the reference you made to the NSATs. And there has been a lot of interest in seeing the civic space, civic activity by citizens. For those who are not even politically inclined, people are taking more interest in governance and politics. And I reflected to an extent in the last general elections. People, more youths particularly, are registered to vote. And that's a good thing. And as to what you've said about whether we're having the necessary reach that we have, no, not really. Okay. And that is why we're having this kind of very important conversation for people to understand. Okay. And I think if you ask me, what I think is the major challenge is this divide that we've seen with people. So along with political awareness also comes the risk of people now being thinking more in terms of politics, ethnicity, and religion, which you would understand within the context of Nigeria has always been a problem. So people need to understand advocacy is good, activism is good, but it must be done within the purview of good governance. Not it doesn't have to be through the lenses of tribe, of politics, or whatever religion you belong to. And I think that's very key and very important, because really, as guys we're sitting along this table, we're having a discussion. The tribe didn't come into view. Everything we feel as Nigerians, the fuel subsidy that's about to be removed, the ban on Twitter, it affected us really. The only disproportionate effect will be for the poor and the vulnerable, really.
So I have a question now, because obviously with us even having this kind of discussion now, I would say it's also a privilege. And when I say it's a privilege, it's because we know the average Nigerian, unfortunately, if you look at the country, there's a lot of poverty, which means there's a lot of uneducated people in terms of there's no accessibility to schools, internet, things like that to learn about this now. So even with all the things you said, the majority population, like we said, is the poor. So I guess one of my questions is, how do we how the SERAP or organizations like this now start targeting those people who are the masses, who are also going to have majority of the influence when it comes to things like elections, things like the problems going on in the country. Because we see when we talk about problems going on, even NSARS, all these little things, NSARS is probably the one time that we saw everybody, lower class, middle class, high class, come together. After that election, you started seeing the divide even more, even amongst the rich, but definitely amongst the poor. So how do you all start? Because even for us as citizens, we also have our own responsibility to do that. But how do organizations like you now reach out to those masses of people so that way the change can potentially come when you have the numbers?
That's very important. And that is why, really, government policies and actions also affect the kind of work we do and the kind of conversations that we have. So you can understand this kind of conversation now. If it is restricted in terms of broadcast on the internet, for example, it's not only going to affect the work we do, it would affect you guys, and it will affect everyone who listens to you and who wants to contribute in one way. Because what you're doing, this conversation is also part of society. And so that is part of the challenges we are facing as an organization, to get people to understand the benefits of advocacy. Really, it's very important. And to reference what we've said about NSAS, I think what happened under President Jonathan was also a good rallying point, the fuel increase there. People came together, it cut across class, and possibly some people used it for political opportunity, but really it was almost as compelling as the NSAS. But we've seen the benefits of NSAS now. People are focusing on governance. And I think the most important conversation we need to have now is conversation that is focused on good governance and less of the politics part of it. It's more like guys talking about women without who gets the girl. I don't know whether that makes sense.
So this is good, and that's a good platform, because I think the direction the conversation is now going into is, now I've always had personal interest in just people being good. Like if I'm tasked with this duty, to me, just fulfill the duty. I mean, whatever personal gains you want from it, fulfill the duty. Do you understand? You can decide to be smart about how you fulfill the duty, but as long as the duty is fulfilled. Now, I feel like a lot of our problem with accountability, because that's one of the reasons why we are where we are today, lack of accountability. One of our problems with accountability as Nigerians is that we don't even know what we should be accounting for. So I keep telling people this, that the average Nigerian does not even know what the constitution says. Doesn't even know that the governor should provide this and provide that, and free schools should be in every single street, or there should be waste management free of charge for every. We don't even know what is in the constitution. And you see, when we were younger, and I'm sure you can relate to this, then there was this little pamphlet, current affairs pamphlet. Everybody had it in their little bags, So if they asked you on the go, who is the minister of this, even if you didn't know it offhand, you quickly bring it out and say, let me check. Now, there was a lot more transparency then. Of course, not the highest level of transparency we need, but there was a lot more transparency then. It has definitely diminished over the years. Right now, I'm not even sure they do social studies now in primary school, right? And it begs to question, now, how do we work back to the point where the average Nigerian can actually know, oh, police officer, you are arresting me on what grounds? I have the law book here. Show me your own law book. The law says you cannot stop me unless I have a warrant for my arrest, or unless you've been flagged by your whatever that I should be stopped for questioning. We don't have any of those. So how do you think we can actually get back to that point? Because these are one of the things that I feel like we need to address.
It's also very important, and you've said it all, civic education, making people understand. And when you spoke about transparency and accountability, I have a very good example that I think makes a lot of sense. And that is why we need to understand the difference between transparency and accountability. For instance, you have a brother abroad who is sending you money to build a house for him. Okay. Being transparent means honesty, so to speak. You use the funds for what it's meant for. Yeah. But being accountable means when he or she comes back, you're able to show him exactly, this is for transport, this is for social level of nails and all that. Nigerians are yet to understand the need for transparency and accountability in governance, because it means, for instance, we have a budget of over 20 trillion for 2023. It's not enough to hear about that amount. How is it been spent? Who is getting what, when, and how? And what does that mean for me? And don't forget, we also owe a lot of money. And I think the Guardian did something some days ago. They shared the total debt burden of Nigeria among Nigerians. I think yours is 348,000.
I think all of us have to pay over 300,000.
So I think you should just go ahead and borrow some more money. So you had to, because you're in debt already, really. That's what it means for all
But then you said, but here's my issue now that I've always wondered now, because it's like he was saying about, it's like it all comes down to education in terms of us educating ourselves. But then who really can hold them accountable? That's my question. Because if you look at first world countries now, if I'm correct, correct me if I'm wrong. In first world countries now, some of them now, they would at least, how do I explain it? Like I always say this joke. There's a joke they always say, or Farrakhan even said, he said, America is the most corrupt country in the world. But you won't ever see it, you understand? Because it's like you said, if somebody's going to they do it to a point that the good will show, you understand?
Like they will
and
actually
the bad is covered up to a point that's not too much compared to Nigeria that you will just see bad, 10%
and you
good.
see they will let you know it's bad. They're not even.
Are we that bad, really?
Oh,
We
we're
are
horrible. We're horrible.
But then that's what I'm trying to say is like, how do we, like he was saying, like in what ways can we actually start holding them who's going to hold them accountable? In America, the people to an extent, but at least government still will do something to a certain point. Also, on the other hand, we can't even trust the government.
But it's not really the people in America and in the more developed democracy. It's their institutions. But you should understand that people hold institutions accountable because our institutions are built by laws and people hold the law accountable. For instance, I don't want to mention names. You've seen American presidents who acted more like a Nigerian president. But what stopped him, or I don't want to mention his name. What were the institutions? I don't know his name. I can't even recall his name. I think I forgot, really. So the thing is, the institutions made sure that he or she couldn't do what he or she wanted to do. And those are strong institutions that built over time. And that's what we need, is to build those institutions, not individuals. People will now make sure that the institutions are very accountable to hold whoever is in government in check.
So does it not mean we'll now have to change our constitution?
Not really. And really, laws are not meant to be perfect, really. No law anywhere else.
But I was going to ask you that.
The
question
law
too.
reflects us, what we are as a society. So it means we would change our laws to suit what we want.
No, but then a question now. This is an open question.
Yeah.
So again, the constitution that is currently in place right now in Nigeria, would you guys say that is an accurate? You're smiling. You're smiling because you know what I want to ask.
Of course,
you know what I want to ask.
Really. So you know what? Actually, to a very large extent, yes. Yes. Hold on.
Oh, this is interesting.
Hold on while I say. So to a very large extent, I say yes to a very large extent because we actually hear the laws being passed. You know, there was a time when they passed a law saying that police checkpoints are actually not supposed to be legal. And a while ago, I can't remember what year this was now, where they actually said that, look, all police checkpoints should actually be called off. These random ones that come up at night, where you just see police checkpoints, four different police checkpoints in one particular area of Lagos, I'm not going to mention, and they are not supposed to, because they're not actually checking anything, right? But I won't give details of what they do, but they are not actually checking. Now, the Constitution somewhere would provide information as to why that should not be so. But what happens, what we see on ground, is that they are just deployed, they do this, they do that. Even the Constitution, even just about traffic rules alone, Constitution will tell you don't break the red light, right? There's a fine that comes with it. Correct me if I'm wrong. There's a fine that will come with it.
I don't know. So, on this question, I don't know the constitution of it.
Yeah, I think we need to clarify that. The thing is, the constitution is just one of the many laws we have. We have hundreds, thousands of laws in Nigeria. But the constitution is supreme, like lawyers will say. It would mean that if any other law conflicts with the provision of the constitution, then the other laws will not have so much power over the
so
there are other laws. So there are no traffic rules in the constitution, but there is road traffic.
So I didn't mean
that provides many things.
So I didn't mean that.
For instance, INEC. There's an electoral act that guides what INEC will do and what INEC cannot do. There is a police act that guides what the police can do and what the police cannot do. But all that works within the context of the Constitution. So, for instance, a good example is Section 39 of the Constitution. It talks about the freedom of expression. And that is a two-part thing. It means you can hear and you can speak. And when I mean speak, means to impart information and to receive information. Yes. That looks so basic, but that Section 39 has so many benefits. And when you break it down, it has more moving parts. It means that people can express themselves through any medium they can, and they also have the right to receive information, including on social media. It means we can have this conversation with one another, broadcast it to people, and get feedback from them. And so there are laws that have been made pursuant, of course. And so there are laws that have been made pursuant to that. So for instance, the NBC Act, which is the National Broadcasting Commission Act, that set up the NBC to regulate TV, radios, and media houses, was made pursuant to that Section 39. So it means that whatever the NBC should do should not be to restrict the freedom of expression, but to encourage it, you understand? And that is why lawyers will go to court, like SERAP will do, to challenge any action that the NBC does that conflicts with that right. So police, for instance, they are created to save lives, protect lives, and all that, to protect some of the rights guaranteed in the Constitution. For instance, the right to life, your right to freedom of assembly, your right to a lot of things. So it means that any action that the police is taking that not infringes on those rights, of course, you have the right to challenge them. But that is within the confines of the court.
So now, this now further buttresses what I said earlier about Constitution actually does have laws in place to protect the citizens. The problem here is that
implementation,
enforcement. And that's why I gave the basics. So when I was talking about the traffic law, I wasn't saying it in the umbrella of the constitution. I was saying on the umbrella of the laws generally. And the average Nigerian knows that if you break the traffic light, there's a fine. In fact, last mile official would always tell you every time you broke a light. But you would also, in the same breath, see a downfall driver beating the traffic light and you see the last mile waving at him.
Don't follow him.
So you see what I'm saying? So now at that point, what gives him immunity? And you see that's where we have the problem.
If you ask me now,
Who you go
so
after?
he doesn't have immunity. He doesn't. He's breaking the law.
So that
He's
means
breaking the law,
nobody.
yes.
So to go back to your point, that means we're not. How do I explain it?
What you're saying is that there's nobody that's actually there's nobody to answer to with these problems, because his question was,
Yes and no,
who is
because
holding them accountable?
because even
somebody
should
needs-
be holding
so
them
there's an head of
accountable.
last mile, for
But then
instance.
my question is, like I said, even the last mile official itself, because somebody's wearing a uniform doesn't mean they know the rules or laws. So the question, so it comes back. So
but it's assumed that they know the basic of the rules that
yeah.
guides his or her job per time. It doesn't have to be a lawyer, doesn't have to know all the laws, but he understands what I can do, what I can do. If someone beats a traffic light, for instance, the last mile official should know that this person has broken the law. But what can I do to restrain, arrest, or stop him? He too must not break the law in the course of trying to restrain and arrest. So there are very overlapping rights.
Yes.
that's
That is
why
why
the similar thing
we
with
must
the police
respect
thing
those
you're
rights.
just saying now.
Yeah.
So now it's because he had a very important question, which I guess is still a great area to respond to, where knowing who is actually going to hold the government accountable is where one of our biggest problems is, because we say that we know these things, right in broad daylight, the laws are being broken. Even when the court passes a judgment and an order, and I mean, we've seen cases where I've not even specified what courts, I've not specified.
Why are we
what orders.
sugarcoating? Say the truth.
No.
Nothing actually goes
Again,
through. I will say then. I will say nothing goes
We don't
through.
want to be
Nothing
banned.
happens.
We don't want to be banned.
We won't be
Something's
banned. Yeah?
Something happens, really.
Anyways,
we do. And I'm not choosing to be optimistic, because really some good things.
Oh, no, of course I agree.
No. I mean sometimes, but majority of times.
So I think it's talking about the scale. So you see, what we see on the news is that in the end, these laws are broken. Let me give you a random example. Snake ate 30 what million?
Was this snake or babu?
They said
No, I'm asking
there
you.
was
I'm asking for a friend.
There was snake, there was rats.
No, okay.
There was snake, there was rats.
No, snake swallowed.
Swallowed,
No,
yes.
swallowed.
I think rats.
These are
must
true
have
stories.
eaten.
You can go look online. These
So
are
now
true
you
stories.
see the fact that even that news can even make it to light, lets you know that somebody somewhere knows there's no one.
But so that we don't sensationalize it, someone said in his or her defense to questions being asked about money that is what happened.
That's what happened, right?
So again, it's ridiculous, right? But that person will have his or her day in court.
And do you know what's scary? Is it ridiculous? Because it comes back to what I said about the education and the majority of people. Do you know that there could be a high population of people in this country that will believe that thing happened?
That snake
Because
swallowed
we are I would say, I'm just saying in a privileged way, we are exposed and educated to a certain point that we can ask certain questions. But unfortunately, a lot of Nigerians now that don't have that kind of exposure education, they can hear that same tabloid news now and possibly.
I don't think they would believe.
No, do you know why I say possibly? Like, you have to look at it 50-50. Because I asked myself two questions. Okay, you guys, like, for example, you've been in Nigeria longer than me now. You understand? So there's some things that I always say some people are, not you. Let me use an example. Some people sometimes get used to certain things, and then some people don't know certain things. So, for example, the people I'm talking about now that hear these news now, that have grown up in Nigeria, that have grown up in poverty their whole lives, that might not have this kind of exposure. A lot of them, I'm not saying all of them are not exposed enough or educated enough to understand certain things, but unfortunately there might not be that much exposure for a lot of people that, because they've grown up in this kind of cycle in Nigeria, seeing that kind of news,
it kind of normalizes it in their mind. So it becomes like, okay, another one
again,
but what
and
that
there's
is,
never any proof or court case.
But that doesn't
show they believe.
Yeah, but
that
means that they don't believe.
They are not empowered to ask questions.
You answered your own question. So they don't believe, but unlike us, they just don't ask questions.
Who said they don't? But that's
They
what I'm
don't.
saying. Okay, the average Nigerian,
believe.
how many stories have you heard in Nigeria, even
Yes,
us as ourselves,
yes.
that you're like, but then people are believing that story. Like, people around
No,
you.
so but
are,
the
and
stories you're
myself-
talking about are superstitious to some extent. If we're talking about those are different, because you've had cultures precede us that will show maybe one or two evidence. So it's like a gray area. Those who choose to believe, those who don't. It's like religion, basically. That's
what I'm saying.
No,
Who said
but
they
that's
can't believe
different.
that?
That's like me saying that, I jumped from I jumped from
1004.
1004 and I landed on my two legs.
Great.
That is not
a snake swallowing it.
Yeah.
36
million
naira. Again, we have to contextualize it. Someone was asked
that.
a question about what happened to the money, and he or she said that is what happened. Of course, even the people she's telling, of course, they didn't believe him.
I'm telling you, nobody can believe that story.
And if she has a day in court, do you think the judge is going to buy that story?
No, but
even the lawyer is going to have a hard time putting forth that kind of defense.
Bro, even the most uneducated, they don't believe it. But the difference is that they just don't ask questions.
Yeah, they do not have they are not empowered enough to take government.
And I agree to you. I agree with what you're saying. Like a lot of times, Nigerians, they ask too many questions. Cause you I beg, I don't want.
They don't believe, but see,
I feel like
the average Nigerian is actually not stupid.
No, I didn't say they are. By the way, I didn't say they are. Because a lot of people, you see Nigeria now, they're very.
I'm not saying that you're saying that people are stupid. I'm saying that people who would believe snakes swallow 36 million are stupid people. Let's be honest with that. No, it's the fact. There's no gray area to that fact. If you believe a snake can swallow 36 million cash, there's no problem.
And
you are stupid.
Wait.
Question. Was the money in one place?
Exactly. Maybe the snake moved around to different locations.
We play on Nokia phone now. Where
snakes
then
so maybe
I was saying, if I want to be that guy, so we just go. If I want to be that guy, like take an anaconda that can swallow a human being.
A human being is still not the size of 36 million naira.
Again, it depends on the type of currency. If it's dollars,
paper,
for instance,
it's paper.
Maybe
Don't forget,
dollars.
it's paper.
Smaller denomination.
If I want to be that guy. But let me ask a question to you guys now. Another question based off what you said on the act. Let me answer. Some people feel like now, even with these things you're saying, like speaking out is against the law now in Nigeria per se, feels like it at times.
Yeah,
so even
is not as free
exactly.
Anymore.
So what about even with things like protesting? We saw with NSARS now, like technically we should have, if I'm wrong, correct me, we should have the right to protest and speak our minds.
Of course.
However, we saw NSARS and even moving forward, it seems like that has just been an illegal activity. Because even last year, if I remember correctly, they even tried to do some protests again in Lekki Ikoyi Bridge, and we saw what happened.
Yeah, they shut it down.
So with things like that now, do you feel like protest or speaking our truth publicly has now become illegal in Nigeria?
It's not unlawful, but the reality is that because of the shrinking civic space, it's becoming more problematic to do that. Again, this is about, we have laws that guarantee our rights, but how about the implementation of those laws? And don't forget, the government is tasked with the responsibility to protect and promote those rights. So, which is why, again, the buck stops with government. And that is why people must understand that. So, on one part, we have with the people that we call the right holders and the duty bearers. Government are the duty bearers. The people are the right holders. So when they are elected or appointed, they are doing that for us. And that's what the social contract theory says. We must hold them accountable. So for instance, a protest is a right. It's still an offshoot of the right to peaceful assembly and the right to freedom of expression. Because when you protest, either you are singing or walking or carrying a banner, you are giving expression to what you feel. It is a right that is constitutionally guaranteed. But don't forget, for instance, the police also have the power to protect law and order. But the pretext that the police will use is that they want to stop that protest because it is against law and order. But we know for a fact that is not true. Yeah. So again, it becomes a challenge of implementation, not a challenge of the laws. Twitter ban, for example, the freedom of expression is a law guaranteed, and social media is a platform where people can engage, speak, and do a lot of things. Again, facilitating the right to freedom of expression and peaceful assembly. But the government shut it down because President Muhammadu Buhari put out a tweet that was pulled down. That is just the fact. That's the truth. So again, it is not about the laws are inadequate. It is because the laws are implemented poorly or with impunity, and people are not taking enough steps, as it were, to challenge those impunity by those in government within lawful means. And I wouldn't blame Nigerians really. We are trying, as it were. We just need to do more with the full understanding that this is not about politics. This has nothing to do with tribe or religion. It is for good governance.
That's fantastic. So actually, you mentioned something that really just hit the nail on the head, and I really want us to touch more about that, because I personally believe that the average Nigerian does not even know what to do to move us in that direction. You see, a lot of this conversation has now really highlighted so many of the problems that we should address. But the issue still stands that we are very truncated by what solutions we can come up with. Because one of the solutions was protest. In fact, the NSAS protest opened so many doors, and possibilities to this level of accountability that we're trying to attain. But of course, at every point, it kept being, cut in till again last year. I think 2021, we tried to do a remembrance protest on.
Yeah, that was the one year or two ago.
So of what happened occurrence in 2020, October. And you could see then that already the government had deployed police, like the civilians were a threat. Now, when you see what that does is, apart from just physically stopping people from coming out, psychologically now it has already divided that number by half. Right? Of course, I'm just throwing in numbers here, not being accurate. It has now divided the number by half. And what that then happens is that, because a lot of these civic rights movements require a lot of bravery, require a lot of selflessness, right? And that's that box that the government has not tried to put us in by saying we can't protest because we are a threat to the government has now put people in this place where the power they believe they had is now beginning to diminish. So you see, even with the elections, right? If you look closely at the elections, not just as politics, but as the rights aspect of it. I have the right to come out and vote.
Yeah.
My safety should be provided by the police that we pay taxes for. You know, all of that stuff. Now, if we look back at the occurrences of the elections, we can definitely identify that a lot of Nigerians walked away from that whole incident feeling less powerful than when they started. Now, the way I'm looking at this is, the more this happens, the less we're trying to advocate more for the civic rights. So how do we actually bring people back to feel? Because
the motivation to
because now they've said that, oh, you come out to protest now, they'll start shooting people. You come out to raise a voice now, they'll start telling you that you are creating a disturbance. A protest is literally the benchmark for showing that, look, oh, these are our rights. We want you to show accountability.
One of the benchmarks.
Exactly.
Well, I'm not brave, really. So, and we do go to court to challenge this thing.
That's bravery, if you ask me.
No, I know. So, I'm scared of cockroaches.
Okay, well, I guess that's
I don't blame you. Same here, bro.
If they fly, don't find me there.
All right.
So yeah, so you know, I think especially for the people that are watching, like what, and even we want to learn this. What steps do you think we can take to kind of motivate ourselves, to remind ourselves that we still have some power, you know, to hold the lawmakers accountable for some of these things? Because again, we keep hearing random numbers. Oh, somebody's borrowing 800 million somewhere. Somebody's 400 and something million is missing somewhere.
Somebody wants to borrow $200 million.
How do we get to the point where, okay, nobody is saying don't borrow 800. Show us why. Show us how.
And show us how you spend the last ones you borrowed.
Exactly.
I think,
so
to be honest, we need to.
What do we need to do to get there?
I think we need to be radical, to be honest, and it sounds extreme, but it's true, because so many people are so scared to talk every time. It's like, I'm not obviously shooting,
but we can be radical without breaking the law.
No, obviously that's what I mean. But what I mean is, like, they've already instilled so much fear in us in Nigeria. I mean, look at little things now that I don't want to say now because even me sometimes, even especially as a Yoruba man, sometimes, you know, is put on you, like, to be fearful of certain.
Yoruba supposed to be demons, Yoruba demons. I didn't know.
No comment. No. We've graduated from that. No, angels.
Oh, great.
But what I'm saying is that I feel like we need to be radical in that way, in terms of, you look at certain countries, the way they protest when their government is really, really messing up, which is sort of similar to what we did for NSAS.
France now. France was protesting recently.
France kids different. Them, they get hard every day in our protest. I don't understand. Shout out to you French people, but it's like, what I mean by that is, I think we need to be radical in terms of the way we did NSAS. That's when we needed to do it again. But I feel the problem we have, which is why I say it's a bigger problem in the large scale of things, is like, the government also did a tactic that was smart, which was divide us. Because if you notice, there was a lot of unity, which would have now made us, okay, everybody be brave, come together.
Unity is what brought us to the point of elections.
Exactly, that radical nature of, okay, we are. But because there's so much division now,
which is tribe, religion, and politics,
all these different things, we cannot all find, even this election, we could not all find a common goal in something. So I think, to answer your question, what I'm saying is, first, we all need to identify what is our common goal. What are we trying to achieve?
And I think the answer is simple: good governance. Really, good governance is that enabler.
I challenge that. Let me tell you,
because when good governance comes, like for instance, COVID-19. When COVID-19 came, the negativity that came along with COVID-19 affected everyone disproportionately. Maybe just the poor, it affected everyone. So good governance is a major way to motivate people to hold government to account.
Because if you look at first world countries, now, I'm not saying, I always tell this, first world countries are not perfect.
I'll tell you why.
I want to hear your point. Okay. But first world countries are not perfect, but at times we like to use them as an example of where we want to come to as a third world country. You see them, when it comes to certain things, that's why I said, on a surface level, they'll do it. That at least gives you that confidence as a citizen to say,
okay, free healthcare.
Exactly. Like, okay, I can actually, do this. So that way, if you fuck up, okay, I have a confidence and power. But us, I can't say one thing the government has done that's benefited me personally. Maybe I might be blind.
We borrowed money in your name. That's not a bad thing if you think of it, really. Now you owe 300,000.
Can you explain that? Because
Now
a lot of
you
people
owe
a lot of
300,000
Nigerians might not know that. Can you explain that?
It means that Nigeria's debt profile is more than 40 trillion naira. That's what it means. I think it's that likely to rise to 77 trillion as we are going if the National Assembly approves the 22 billion meals and means by the CBN. So it means that you owe 300,000 naira. That's not a bad thing, really. No, the government took it. They took it for you, really. They are doing roads. Remember. Yeah, they have water. Water doesn't run your house.
So no comments.
Maybe you need to
comments.
pinch it.
You wanted to.
So this is why.
And really, I'm being sarcastic.
I'm about to say because everybody will know what I'm saying. What? Like,
before they beat me up.
So this is why I was saying that I partially disagree with your original point
on good governance,
yes.
being a motivator.
Yes, because that should have been the motivator for the elections. Should have. Now, there's, of course, in every endeavor, there will be personal interests in every endeavor, right? But you see, one thing you get to understand about Nigeria, and I would actually, to be honest, give it to Nigerian politicians. They know how to play the politics with their citizens. Let's hand it to them. Might be bad politics, but it's politics nonetheless, right? Now, here's where I'm going with this. The average, will I say poor Nigerian now? Let's just say poor Nigerian. It's hard to, like you said earlier, it's hard to stratify, really. But let's just say the less privileged Nigerian now.
We have 130 million of them, by the way. 133 million.
Very good. So the average unprivileged Nigerian is actually aspiring to be that hoodlum that was able to stop the elections from going the way it was, but gain some monetary compensation.
That's a strong statement.
It's the fact. It's not a strong statement.
You said the average Nigerian.
The average unprivileged
Nigerian
is aspiring to be that hoodlum that caused catastrophe during the elections, but gained monetary compensation.
No, I think that's a strong statement.
Hold on, let me land. I'm still getting to my point. So hold on, let me land. And what I mean by that is, because I'm trying so hard not to mention names and all that stuff.
No, right? That's fine.
But the average Nigerian would look at, and this is again why you have a lot of cybercrime now. We're now in that place where nobody's really trying to work a 9 to 5 to make their ends meet. If they see a good job, no problem. But if you tell them that there's a quicker way to make money, and that quicker way is a little unlawful, and that quicker way might involve creating some catastrophe in the government here and there, but everybody's ready to jump on it. Right?
No.
Okay. Now, reason why I say that that's the case is because that's the only reason you can have people who originally, have brothers and sisters in the community, but still would turn a blind eye to violence happening within the same community that they come from. They knowing fully well that they have, to an extent, some power to stop those people. In fact, you even find cases where those people are exempt because the person comes from there. But then he turns a blind eye to the other people who he doesn't know, and he lets the violence continue. Now, what happens then is that the people that they use as tools, so to say, figuratively, tools for these expeditions, tools for the violence, tools for this, those people are people who are bought over by little tokens.
You're talking about political violence, election violence,
yes.
Right? Okay.
So those are people who are bought over by little tokens. Now, the reason I'm referring to elections is because you mentioned good governance. Good governance should have been the good motivator. But you see, if that was really the case, I would say, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I can't say I can fit into their shoes completely. But to some extent, I do understand, how the poor have lived, right? And I look at it from the angle of, I know that. Now, you see, this is why I said good governance is there. Because to you, you believe that they think that, once this person comes and is good, we'll have water again. We'll have steady lights again.
Not necessarily.
But you see, hold on. I'm saying on the surface level of things. Because when you refer to it, you said, with good governance, like you mentioned, a good government, they have the things they provide for them on the surface, even if they're going to be doing any dirty work behind. We don't even have the surface stuff, and that's what you mentioned earlier. The good motivator for good governance would always be that surface stuff being provided. But
which is why we're here, actually.
But they give us those surface things in tokens.
Yeah, tokenism is part of corruption,
and
actually.
When you give it to them in tokens, you are not. You see, they are using the power of possible good governance to win you in.
No, that's
no. So let me. So from can I hear your point? Actually, can we hear your point? Because my point is different from good governance.
Yeah. So when I say good governance is a good motivator, I'm saying civic education that educates the people to understand the benefits of good governance will motivate them to see
because
beyond
to add on to your point, you said a lot of the people now, like their mentality is that obviously I'm coming in as if I'm a potential hoodlum now, I was like, okay, how can I disrupt these elections or do my own part? But then that's why I said with good governance now, there comes to a point that it starts from the basic level, which is education. Like the next generation that's coming in now, if we had a good government now that was implemented, you can't focus too much on the older generation that's already settled in their ways mental wise, because for them the only way you're going to change them is if you actually provide them with resources or opportunities for change, because their mentality is already set. Compared to the younger generation now, if they're educated from early to see the potentials now of a good government now, their mentality is going to be different. The hoodlum right now is stuck in his ways right now, because from 0 to our age right now, he has seen nothing but poverty, bad governance, everything, which means that is the only way forward. Even now, when you try and educate them, if you notice during election time now, they always try and go to this hoodlum and say, bro, they give you 1,000 naira, you know what, Tamu? But then it's like you said, that guy is hungry and has seen his whole life but nothing but poverty. That can't change him. However, with good governance, there's a lot of other factors that you're saying, but it starts from the foundation.
Yeah, okay, so that means
good governance will mean that it's not poor.
Okay, so the point you guys
and then it will make better choices.
So the point, hold on. The point you guys actually drove at. I mean, there was more information now after you said, because you see, this context you're talking about now means that in our time, the government can be better.
Can't.
Of course it can.
No.
I'm very
You just literally said that the hoodlum is already in his ways.
No.
You have to educate the younger
but that's
people.
okay. It's like you said, if you have a
Because
plan,
that was it's a long shot. Education for me is, I mean, I started by saying that you have to educate, you have to literally equip them with education. But you see, that's a long shot avenue to it, because the average Nigerian that is already in his ways, and that's the truth, and that's what I was getting at. The average Nigerian now believes, okay, if I cross the road, it won't stop me. Meanwhile, that's jaywalking.
So what you're talking about?
When we use this average Nigerian, we don't have data on who
average Nigerian.
So by average Nigerian, we already specified that it's everybody.
Okay, everybody.
Yes, we have specified earlier that it's everybody, including me, including you. Right now, if you are crossing the Lekki Expressway, are you going to think to myself, this is actually against the law? But you know, it's actually jaywalking.
I use the pedestrian bridge.
You know, I know I won't.
You don't believe me?
Let's be honest. I know I won't.
I will. I will.
See,
but
so
if
now,
there was but that's why I said, like, it also comes to, okay, so with what you're saying now, that's one aspect. So like, you're right. Education now is a long
it's a long shot, yes.
But okay, if you're talking about now with good government,
yes,
it still also implies with education. However, you have to add certain things. So, for example, people our age now that are on the streets right now, with good governments now, if there's opportunities provided, it's like I always say this thing in America back in the day now. I always say, like, Nigeria and Africa should go back to the old ways. In America back in the day, when there was the coal days, mining industries, factory days, when Americans used to go to the factories, you used to hire so many people to go to these factory jobs that you provide them with basic necessities to at least live a life. In Nigeria and Africa, I've always said the same thing. If you provided working opportunities, like the way they've built factories, things like that, that you can take a lot of the poor, take thousands of them, there's going to be housing for you here. You work this much, you make this much money. It will shock you how a lot of those boys will run to those jobs to go and do it now. And then from there,
we're talking about realistically now. Okay, so
that is realistic.
No. Let me tell you why it's not.
The industrial age also brought poverty.
Yes,
to the developed world, and then lately to the underdeveloped.
Explain how you mean.
So let me. So I'll let him get spin. But see, this is why I said, because it's almost like you're even further buttressing my points. So now imagine, like you said, the average. Sorry, no, why I keep using average Nigerian.
I was about to say that's Nigerians.
Okay, so
Nigerians, some
Nigerians. Like you said, Nigerians out there are our age on the streets. Are you telling me now that realistically you are approaching Nigerian on the street now, our age, and you let him know, bro, this thing you're doing is not, let's say he's even just being, a rascal on the streets, and you let him know, bro, this thing you're doing is not good. Let's get you off the streets. Let's get you a good job. Let's get you this with good government. You can do it. You think that's going to motivate him to want?
I guess, bro. If I see guys on the streets, I was about to say, bro,
and that's why I was asking the question. What do we do?
No,
because I believe
that's why the alternative. You see how you ask that question. There's also a language you're going to speak to them. Also, say, bro, you get job. No, I don't get job. I look for a job. Bro, I get one job for you. It go give you.
You are the one assuming he's going to say,
"Money not too much, but when you start from here first."
Exactly.
You're the one assuming that he's looking for a job.
No, but bro, every poor person wants something, at least a means to provide for their family.
The politicians have provided that means. You're not understanding this.
That's not a means. That's what I'm saying. That's not providing.
That is corruption.
That's not providing.
Corruption creates more poverty,
and that's
not poverty.
You guys are not understanding me. I am not on the side of corruption, but I'm telling you what.
No, we know you're not.
But you said what we're going by. You said that's them providing.
Yes, that is how
I say. That's
I'm telling you.
Providing.
No, see, look at it like this. Right? I'm a guy on the streets. This guy that's trying to run for House of Reps or whatever has come to us here and has told us, okay, we need to make sure people in this area vote for him. He promises us maybe 50,000 per person. To me, that's my day's hustle. as a street guy. Listen, that's my day's hustle as a street guy. Then you come to me, you ask me for a job that I'm going to be working 30 days in a month. They might not even pay my salary for 3 months. Wait, let me land. Wait, they might not pay my salary for 3 months and everything. And this guy has come, he's told me there's a quick way out. All we have to do is just what? Make sure that people don't vote, or people that vote, don't worry, we go run them. I'm a street guy. I'm in my street ways. I don't have time for education. You're not about to start giving me book of, but the government is supposed to do it.
No, you're also looking at it from a perspective, bro. There's a lot of street guys right now. They don't want to go and do that election stuff. I'm not saying
that there are not a lot of.
I know, but
election showed us that there are more
because there's no other alternative. That's what we're saying right now. If you're telling me if you're telling me a street boy right now that he get family, he get a son right now, he has a babe now, he has a son. Mm-hmm. Bro, go and do this thing. You will do this election matter now. 50K they go give you, which means he's still at risk to die. He's still at risk to go to jail. Or you can, bro. They get this job that they open for boys now. You go get 250K. They even go give you 50K up front. But you go work for the month, but you go get these benefits. You see, which one do you think he's going to take? The topic here is motivation.
Motivation.
What you're talking about here is that
advocacy that can be used to motivate people to hold government to account.
You see, that means works. But it only works if you're talking to somebody who has not already been disappointed by the government multiple times. You can't now use. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. You can't now suddenly use good governance. You can't now suddenly use good governance. But
what's the alternative?
I understand that there's actually
right now you're sort of putting the ideology in them like if there's a new hope that's brought.
I'm putting
the ideology. No. What I'm saying is the way you're like it sounds now. The way you're okay. The way you're
I'm not the one that started it.
But that's where you're sounding to me.
I'm trying to let you know that that's how the Nigerian out there is going. Because now we've had elections again. That still didn't work. You see,
okay, the example you gave, let me just comment from that angle.
Yeah.
Now, look at the NBS report, that's the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics.
Okay.
There's a multi-dimensional poverty report that came out in 2019, which actually said, more than 133 million Nigerians are poor.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
If you know what multi-dimensional poverty means, it means that for an average guy who is earning 200K per month, who even has a car and is flossing and is fine, it means that if he has an ailment that breaks his back for an accident, for instance, the money he has he can't even treat him and treat his family. Mm-hmm. So for even people that are earning 500K and I think is fine, anything can happen to him and set him back because there are no systems and structures. So that poverty is not the amount he has in his hand.
It's not the money, yes.
It is about structures and systems. Is there a National Health Act that works, that makes sure that a part of government is subsidized to help him? And do you know that the average person who has diabetes now, the amount of money used to treat it can make you poor, even if you are rich before that. And that is so when you speak of poverty, you need to understand it from that context. If you talk to the average Nigerian you're talking about, make him understand what bad governance has done to him and what good governance can do to him. If he or she really understands it, I bet you he's going to buy the idea of good governance. Because that 50K,
I agree.
50K, last, 50K now 1 week now.
But you see, the problem is that you see it as that.
Well, I get where he's coming from.
If that was the case, elections wouldn't have gone the way they went. Because, I tell you, a handful of these guys know.
The politicians made it.
And
that guy didn't really have a choice.
And that's why I'm saying that, you see, these politicians we're talking about are still actively doing that.
Which is why we citizens now need to act within the context of a law to advocate and educate ourselves.
And that's why I said, okay, what the hell? So now, do you remember my original question was, what means? That's how this all started. I started by asking, we have these problems, we've identified them. But how does the Nigerian now both rich,
formal and informal education to make us know the benefits of good governance as a motivator for us to hold government to account?
Because even
how do I educate
like this?
So it's like this.
How do I educate myself?
So conversations like this now is what starts it now, because you're not going to tell somebody, hey, go online.
That's not what I meant. I meant how do I? Okay, so you know how I mentioned that a lot of Nigerians have to be either actively interested in civic rights or politics or current affairs to even show interest at all, right? This is me asking because not everybody's going to have the luxury of conversations like this. If some people don't want to hear anything politics, I don't want to hear it.
But people they talk about when they say pepper soup.
Sorry, question.
Under the bridge, it's like
because I was about to say like this. NSARS. If you look at
newspaper stands early in the morning.
Wait, question. NSARS. If you look at NSARS, this is what made me realize every Nigerian pays attention to politics because NSARS now. All of us were not politically aware. All of us were not, politicians. We all are Nigerian. We're citizens of a country that we know these things are affecting us. Rich, middle class, poor. poor.
we can
So
see
that's
it,
already
really.
the start of everybody's paying. Like he said, every morning you're driving, those guys are. It's like outside my estate, you see them. They read newspaper.
I don't
that-
You know that way
I'm not saying you are. I'm not saying you
that
are.
way
It's
they
like
take
you
mouths,
said.
yeah.
But what I'm
When
saying
you
is
see
the
boys
point
gather-
you're making, and that's why I said I understood what you're saying in terms of obviously it's very easy to say this, but when somebody's in that situation, you're trying to tell them this. There's that side of I'm hungry
But
now.
we can't give
However,
up.
we can't. That's what I'm saying. We can't give up because.
So now we're getting
That's
somewhere.
what I say. Conversations like this start, bro. NSAS, I'll give you a perfect example. Just a quick example. Me, I didn't give a damn about Nigerian politics before
Same.
NSAS.
Trust me, don't worry.
I didn't care. But then when NSAS started, I looked at, okay, what are we really talking about? Have I been affected by police brutality? Yes. Is the government benefiting me? No. Me that I've started businesses, it benefiting me? No. I'm suffering even though I'm technically from a privileged background in Nigeria because I've seen other stuff. So because of that, I'm going to start talking. But then as I talk to more people, I did educate myself. Bro, even as we're talking now,
So
I
we're educating
educated
ourselves.
myself.
So exactly. So now, see, so this here's what I'm saying. So you see, I agree with everything, but my point is that the education we're talking about so far now clearly is not enough. And by that I mean, like you said, these things about reading papers, having discussions, they've been happening. You see, for me, I feel like we also need to have one more common ground. Common ground is why NSAS actually took off. Common ground is why NSAS took off because at that time, SARS was not discriminating between, okay, you are poor, I won't attack you, you are rich.
I think
there
I'm getting
was
your point.
common ground.
So you're thinking of a critical mass, an event or an activity that will be that critical
funny enough,
mass.
it doesn't even have to be an event. It could be a series of events.
But that's why we have
There's been
conversations.
but then, bro,
bro,
you just
I'm
said now,
saying that
there's
it
been
was just-
series of events, series of this,
Naira
series of that.
scarcity.
Yes,
Well,
what do you want to
all
happen
this
in
year,
Nigeria?
all this
Okay,
year,
so are we saying that we don't have alternative solutions than the ones we already have?
But we need to do it more.
so that people
Bro, do you know NSAS was just 2 years ago? So
that's my
imagine
point.
years
So what's
of...
the more? You guys are not getting me. We are saying this
the
thing, but we're
more
not-
is
It's happening right
conversations
now.
like
It's
this in
Bro,
multiple forms.
do you know right now?
different
Okay, can I ask you an
platforms.
honest question? 2 years ago, did you really see... They could have been happening, oh. But if you notice in the last 2 years, more podcasts are showing up that have more topics like this that were happening. Because of NSAS now, more organizations are starting to show their... Bro, I'll be honest, I didn't know what SERAP was beforehand. But because of NSAS and things like that now, conversations now, even yourself, you were educating me on certain things. I was like, yo, we're actually starting to have the conversation more. But the question is, are we going to continue that momentum? Because
course we
every
will,
generation, I feel like they've done what he's saying in terms of we've had this same cycle. A lot of us, after one incident, will start being politically aware. Then the government shuts us up.
You know why I say this?
Then it
Let
starts
me give you an
again.
example. Of course, we need to still touch on one more thing before we close. But
I do.
so remember when the Lekki VI toll gate was being run up? Remember that there was a protest even at that time. My dad was even one of those people. In fact, he was locked up in prison for being one of the protesters, right? Or rather, in party rather, for being one of the protesters. And this is just me further buttressing that if it's about talking about the incidents of, I mean, we some of us, it even hits closer to home, so we can actually really. But you see, the only reason why NSAS took over was because there was a common ground. Now, I'm not saying that we need to, but you see, that issue of good governance, how do we make it a common ground? That's really what I'm asking. I know that it's a challenge. It might not even be an answer you have right now, right?
No, I think I understand. So again, it's that critical
how do you
mass,
create that
event thing,
Uh-huh,
rallying
maybe-
cry
maybe
that makes
some-
us see what good governance is from
God
a
bless you.
personal angle.
Thank you very much. Because see, if the Nigerian on the street now looks at me going on the road and he looks at me and say, this one rich people's problem. You know what I'm saying?
But then when he's doing that, do you go to him now and also say, yo, bro, you know we're doing this protest because this thing is happening that's also affecting you?
Of course, that's how.
And he doesn't have to
started.
believe you right there and there,
Right then.
But at least let him hear that.
Yes.
So if he sees it tomorrow, now what's in these people they talk about? So they
But these things are. I'm saying that these things are, like I said, this was like he told you about how many years ago.
True.
That was a protest. You know, we had another protest again. But as we're going, it's making, and this is why we had this conversation about free speech. You see, because now that even the only thing we had to hold on to, which was free speech,
Social media.
is now also trying to be cut off because now we're going. That's the last one.
I was about to say because of
See the AppCon thing now that I've been seeing around recently. I mean, maybe shed more light on it now, but I've been seeing news about, you know, the government trying to really truncate, you know, the means of, you know, free speech across the country. Tell us more about that, because I think it's going to be an impending problem moving forward.
Yeah, it's one of those unfortunate incidents that we've seen recently, post NSAS, as part of the clampdowns on the civic space.
Okay.
And with civic space, we understand it's that area where people can engage legally, freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, and all those other allied rights. So these kind of regulations that we've seen with the ACON, they are consequences of the shrinking civic space. And we've seen laws that have come in these guys before. The NGO bill was one of that. It may look subtle because maybe you don't have an NGO, you think it doesn't doesn't affect you. The social media bill was one of those laws. The hate speech bill was one of those laws. And we've seen government trying to regulate social media as it were. But this conversation should be had within the context of that global understanding of what social media is, how it aids freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, and even other rights, both that are even economic in nature. So these kind of laws impact on the ability of people to engage, because it may look well-intentioned, but like we've seen with various laws in the past, within the Nigerian context, the implementation may become a tool to further repress the civic space. And so that is why we must also continue this advocacy to make sure that these kind of laws are not implemented. So when we challenge laws, for instance, the SERAP, we're not challenging those laws because the letters of the laws are itself bad, as it were, but because some of the letters or the intended use or even with the implementation of that law may infringe on the rights that have been already granted as fundamental rights in the Constitution. So, for instance, the Cybercrimes Act, the infamous Cybercrimes Act, Section 24, had been used. And the law looks harmless if you read it, that particular Section 24. But what he says clearly is saying that if somebody sends you a message through any means, and you, the receiver, perceives that it's bullying or cyber stalking, then of course it becomes a crime. And then that should raise a question without even you being a lawyer. So if I send a message to you, it is your perception, the subjectivity of what the message is about that makes it a crime for me. That's the problem.
Very great
but that law, when it was made, even if you see the heading, Cybercrimes Act, you are more likely to think it's a law to stop Yahoo. But that Section 24 has been used. Experience has taught us. It has been used over time to clamp down on anyone who dare tweet anything on social media.
Because it becomes a problem.
And we've gone to court to challenge that, and the court has agreed with us, the ECOWAS court, that particular section is a conflict with the freedom of speech granted by the African Charter. So again, the AMCON law is not bad as it looks, but we have to understand the implementation of those laws. When you look at the Treason Act, for instance, again, it makes it look like it's not so bad, but it's been used for much like anyone. They just charge you for treason. And then you're in trouble just because you put out a tweet on social media. So implementation is a problem.
So because of time now, like, we really wanted to go dive deep into this, but I would say so people can educate themselves more. Where can they find you? Where can they find more information on SERAP? Where can they go do more research to, read up more about what we've discussed today?
Yeah, we have social media platforms that we're on Facebook, Twitter, we're even on TikTok.
So I guess we'll put the handle
SERAP Nigeria.
Okay, so SERAP Nigeria.
All right,
and we have a website too.
What's the website?
www.serap-nigeria.org.
All right, guys. So you've heard it here first. Go and do your research, because conversations like this are actually healthy. I told you we'll be on it. This is actually what we need. And again, because of time, we had to end it. But thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you.
Yeah, we do.
Again, to everybody that's out there that's listening to the podcast, you see, we switch up at times. It's not every time relationship. It's not every time, because we see some blogs are carrying us. Shout out to you. But we know we switch it up. But Mura, do you have anything to say to the people before we go?
Yeah, so I think you guys have a lot of take home from this. Be your brother's keeper to the larger extent. All right? I understand that Nigerians I mind my business, but we're actually at the point where we need to stop just minding our businesses and mind our neighbors' businesses, because it's not, we have that thing where it's happening to me before I now start, finding justice. Also, be your brother's keeper, so that way, the country as a whole can feel like one, rather than the divide that that the current government is trying to create around it. So yeah.
All right, guys. So again, educate yourselves. Have more conversations on this. Again, you can listen to our podcast. We talk about different things like this also, and we'll probably have more discussions. But subscribe to all our channels. And until next time, guys, I'm Michael Sonario.
And I'm Olúwádàre Kóláwolé.
And we'll see you guys next time on Menisms.
Bye.